Hi everybody, welcome to Inventor. So this is Autodesk's 3D modeling software. When you come in, it's probably going to ask you if you want to start learning or start working. If you choose to start working, it's going to bring you to this screen here, and it's going to say you want to do a new command, and your options are to create parts, assembly drawings, where you're going to put parts together, create some drawing documents from your parts, or some presentation documents as well. We're going to start just by selecting part. Now, you can see that when you get into Inventor, you have all of your tools up here, similar to AutoCAD. You're going to see some different names on tools. Usually what you're going to do is you're going to start just by creating a two-dimensional sketch and then bring that sketch into 3D using this extrude tool here. So let's start by making our 2D sketch, which is up located here. There's the option as well to create 3D sketches as well if you like. When we select 2D sketch, it wants to know what plane we want to start on. So as you hover over top of the different planes, it'll light up and turn green with the one that you want to select. For today, we're just going to select our XZ plane. And now you can see that we're now in a two-dimensional drawing space. So this looks a little bit more like AutoCAD with some of our tools. But when you're drawing in Inventor, you're going to see that some of the techniques are a little bit different than in AutoCAD. So in AutoCAD, normally you're specifying the line length and angle as you draw it. Inventor, usually people work a little bit differently, which allows you to have a little bit more constraints when you're drawing within 3D modeling. So we're going to start by selecting just our line tool, similar to what we do in AutoCAD. And we're going to start over here at our origin. And I'm just going to start drawing a few lines and just kind of create a little bit of a random shape here that we can use. Okay, so I've just created kind of a random shape. Now in Inventor, often what you're going to do is start to constrain your drawing after you've made a sketch. So you can use a similar technique to AutoCAD where you're specifying line lengths as well. Try this sometime and see if it works well for you guys. So up over here we have all of our constraints. Now they're just images. If you'd prefer to see what each of those means, you can right click and go to create constraint, and then it'll tell you what each of your constraints is. So common ones that people start using would be like a perpendicular, parallel are common ones. So let's say I'm looking at using perpendicular. I'm looking here and saying, well, you know what, this line, I want it to be perpendicular to this one. I've selected my perpendicular constraint. I'm going to click on this line and this one. And now what it's done is it's lined that up for us and it's made it perpendicular. So if I decide to grab onto this line and move it, right now it's not letting me move that one. If I were to click on this one here, I can still move that one. Okay, so the reason why it's not letting me move this one is because I've taken this line and I started it on our origin. So I basically anchored it to our origin. This line is considered perpendicular to that, so in a sense, I can't grab it and move it. Any of these other lines, we can freely move them around and shape whatever we want our object to be, which is, like I said, a little bit different than what we would do in AutoCAD. So let's say we want this length to be a certain length here. We could then click on dimension, click on our line, snap it down, and then it gives us an option to type this in. Let's say we actually want that to be 1.5 inches. So now what it's done is you can see that this line is now set to 1.5, which means that this line isn't going to want to move on us because now it's set to be perpendicular and on the end of this line that's set at 1.5. So once you put these constraints in, you now cannot bend your shape around with it basically without breaking those constraints. So we still can change some things about it. We haven't specified the length of this line. So you can see as I grab this line here and move it, it actually shortens this line up. If we had a certain length that we needed that line to be, we could click on it and say, well, you know what, we want that line to be 0.3 units. So we'll click it down and go 0.3. Now that we've done that, as we take this line, this one doesn't want to really move because now it is set at this point right here, which is connected to a line that has constraints to it. We still can shape this one here and this one here. So what we could do as well is say, well, you know what? I want this line to be parallel to this one here. Well, we could come over here and say, let's click on our parallel constraint. We're going to make this line and this line parallel to each other. And now it tries to follow any of our drawing, and now it puts this one and this one parallel. And maybe we'll say, well, actually, I want this one and this one to also be parallel. And now it's kept that line length there. And maybe I might say, well, this one here, I want that to be a shorter line than this. So that's 1.5. Maybe we want this line to be 1.2. Okay. So now this is pretty much locked in, other than we haven't really specified our height over here. If, let's say, we know what that height is, we can click on a dimension here, and we can say, well, let's put that at 1 unit, 1 inch. And now you can see that everything is pretty much locked in. We can't really move. Oh, I guess we can move this guy because we haven't specified this line length over here. So that's something that we could do as well. But we're going to keep it like this. Actually, you know what? Let's specify that. Why not? Let's dimension this guy here. And let's say that we want that to be at 0.5. Okay. So now you can see that all of our lines have turned black, meaning that if we grab on any of them, we can't move them. We have all of our constraints, so the shape can't be manipulated. You can always go and change this stuff too. You can edit constraints. If you want to see what constraints you have on, you can right click and you can say show all constraints, and now we can see which ones there are. So you can click on them and change them. We can change our dimensions too. Just by clicking on them, we can go in and edit that as well. Once we're done our 2D sketch, we can just go to Finish Sketch. Now it brings us back out into our 3D modeling area. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this sketch and we're going to make it into 3D. And we're going to do it by using our Extrude tool. So we're going to click on Extrude, and we only have one surface here, and it automatically selects that surface. I'll show you later how we can select between different surfaces if we need. Okay, now as we select Extrude, it gives us a little menu here, and it asks what profile we want to extrude, from which sketch, and then it asks us a distance. So we can go in and say we want that to be 1.5, let's say, inches. We can choose the direction that it extrudes. So right here, it's set to default. You could change that and flip it the other way. Or what you can do is a symmetric extrude. So it goes half in one direction, half the other. Or you can do an asymmetric, where you say maybe a certain amount in one distance and another amount in another distance. We're just going to keep it basic and go to default here. Once we click OK, now what happens is our original sketch that we did, all of our dimensions in the sketch is now gone. So our extrusion consumed our sketch. There is a way to bring it back if you need it for anything, but what would happen on elaborate objects is if you kept all your sketches, it would really clutter up your drawing. Over on the left-hand side here, we have a list of all of our commands so far. So we started at our origin, and then you can see here we did extrusion number 1. Now there's a little drop-down menu beside it. If we click that plus sign, it then shows us sketch number 1. So if we hover over top of it, you can see that. And if we ever need to bring it back, we can just right-click and we can go Share Sketch, and that'll turn it back on if we need it for anything else. It's assuming, though, that we're done with it now, so it turns off the view on it. Okay? Okay, let's now look at playing around with this object. Now, once you've made a block, basically, you can start to add things to it. So you can also use your view cube over here to rotate around your block if you like. Personally, I really like clicking on this little button here and using the orbit to be able to spin it around and look at whatever space of it you want. I'm just going to go on the back side here, and we're going to create another 2D sketch. Now, we don't have that plane that we had before, choice of planes, but instead we get to choose on our object where we want to sketch, and it'll light up for us wherever we want. So we're going to choose this surface here, and what we're going to do is look at creating a circle on there. So you could sketch out and get an exact point for a circle when you want it. We're just going to select a random point here. We're going to click it down, and we're going to select a dimension for it. So it's set at 0.4. We're going to make that 0.5 just for an even number. You could constrain it and dimension it to these edges and get it in a specific spot, but we're not too worried about that right now. We're going to go finish sketch, and now we have our circle on our sketch. If we click extrude, it automatically selects our last sketch there, and it defaults to the last amount that we extruded right now, which is 1.5. Let's say we only want that to come out 1 inch. We're just going to click 1. And now what you could do too is look at what would happen if we were to flip that. So if we flip that, it'll actually cut through our object. So we're going to flip that back. So you can either do an add or a join. So if you go right here, you can say, well, I would like to join my new extrusion to my old extrusion, which is what is defaulting right now. You could, if you want to remove it, you would select your cut, and it would then flip through and cut through our object. Or you could intersect or create new solids. So we're just going to join them together right now, flip our direction, bring it out, say OK, and now we have added to our object. Okay. So now you know how to add and subtract from your object. I'm going to show you guys a couple more tools here, and this one is wonderful. I really like this one. It's called Shell. So we're going to click on Shell, and now what you're going to do is basically if you want a fixed wall length of an object and then to open up an object on the inside, you select Shell. We're going to start by selecting a face that we're going to open it up. So we're going to select this face right here. And then we can do is select the thickness of our shell. So it says 0.1. I'm going to go 0.7 or let's go 0.05. Just make it a little bit thinner than what it defaults to. 0.05. Now when you're shelling, you can choose to shell towards the inside, shell towards the outside, which would make your object bigger. You see that? Or you could shell to the in and the out and basically split the difference. So you want to think what was the important size when you're making your sketch. For us, it was the exterior, so we want to shell to the inside so we don't change our exterior values. We're going to say OK, and now what we've done is created a shell on the inside of our object and opened it up, just like that. The last thing I want to show you guys is your fillet tool, which is similar to what you have used in AutoCAD, but we're just going to fillet the edges of our 3D model. So if we go on here and select fillet, it's defaulting the radius right now to 0.125. So we're just going to click on this corner here, and if we like that distance, we can keep it, and we'll just hit apply. Okay, and now maybe we want to select another fillet, and maybe we want to change our radius to 0.05. We want just a slight round, and maybe that's going to be on this corner right here, and then we hit apply. So now you can see that we have gone over two-dimensional sketches and constraints. We've extruded to add, we've looked at extruded to cut, we've shelled, and we've used our fillet tool. Those are some ones that you can use to have some fun with.